What's up everybody, welcome to the second ever Remotion tutorial. Today we are going to create an automation from start to finish where we are going to take some data from an API and turn it into an animated Instagram story which you can easily generate and post anytime you want. So in case you don't know, I run an app myself called Bestande, which is an app for the students of the University of Zurich. And there's a feature in there where you can write messages into a group chat. There's like for each course there's a group chat, and of course people like to troll, write stupid messages. And what I want to do is to take the most entertaining message of the day and post it on the Instagram story of Bestande to create some content for that account. Alright, so it's not just a tutorial, it's a case study of how to automate it from start to finish, how I make it that I can press a button to create the video. So it's not just the design, but also the workflow that I'm going to talk about today. So before we start, I want to quickly say thank you for the amazing reception of the Remotion launch. I could have never imagined to get so many likes and views, and the community has fostered around it. I get pull requests. The project is doing so well and makes me so happy. And I think it already has changed my life. Also, I got so many messages, many more than I can reply to, and some of them are like even in foreign languages, like for example this one. La vidéo ci-dessus a été réalisée avec React. Remotion est un game changer pour le monde de motion. Il est désormais possible de créer du contenu MP4 en passant par React. So, I don't even understand the message because it's in French, but what I think it's trying to say is
it's a game changer.
Alright everybody, let's go. Of course we start off by typing in yarn create video. And then it's gonna ask us what we are going to call our project. I'm going to call it Remotion Stories. And then we have to wait like approximately 2 minutes or longer depending on your internet speed. Because we need to wait until it downloads a copy of Puppeteer. So grab a coffee in the meanwhile. But I want to tell you that we plan on getting rid of this need so that you don't need to wait this long. You don't need an extra copy of Puppeteer in the near future. Alright, actually I have a very fast internet, so this was quite fast. We cd into the directory and we open the project in Visual Studio Code. Alright, let's place the editor in here. Increase the font size. Call npm run the command npm start on the command line, and here we have our hello world project. Okay, so the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna install some dependencies. I like to use tiled components. Also, I'm gonna install React Native and React Native Web and the types for React Native, because as you will see, this is an example where we are going to import and components that I defined in my app, and we are going to reuse it. Alright, let's do that. And In the meanwhile, we can start creating a component. So you don't need to import React in here because it's a new version and you don't need to type import React from React. And let's just render something to begin with and then replace the hello world composition, and we can also remove these. I'm gonna do npm start again. We can get rid of all of these files. And here we have our new empty composition. Let's tweak it a little bit. The duration, it would be handy to have the duration dynamically, but I have decided for this tutorial we are just going to keep the duration static because it's quite complicated, and maybe in the future I will update Remotion so that it's easy to dynamically calculate the duration based on the props that you give, but right now it's quite complicated. So for now, let's just make the composition approximately 7 seconds long, and I just type in 7 times 30 because we are also setting 30 frames per second. An Instagram story has the dimensions of 1080 and a height of 1920. So it's like full HD, but in portrait mode. Alright. And now let's think about the props. For this composition, I want to take in an array of message IDs. These are IDs which we can reference to the Bestände API to fetch the actual chat messages and their text content and who wrote it and who liked it and all the other metadata. And this is exactly the part that we want to keep dynamic, that we want to switch out. Therefore, we are going to define it as props of the root component. So I'm gonna specify it like this. And as a default props, I have selected 2 messages that I'm gonna load. I guess you will not understand this because only I can manage the database of Bestände, but trust me, these are 2 messages from my database, and we are going to call the API together, so this will make sense in a short while. Okay, so let's go back to our story component and start by making a background. So let's say background green. And so now let's resize it so that you can see it. Maybe we can do something like this. The actual value of the gradient, the brand gradient of my app, is exactly this one. And we are going to add some padding and then have a white card in the middle. Like this. I also like to put a box shadow. Like that. And yes, it does have a really subtle box shadow now. Not sure if you can tell it. Actually, let's refactor this into our own component really quick. Let's just drop that in here. And you don't need to import things like absolute fill. There's an ESLint plugin in Remotion which will automatically import that for you. Alright, so we did that, and now let's wrap this in an absolute fill again, and let's start making some content. So we have these message IDs, and we are going to add a use callback in which we will just do a normal API request to fetch the data of these messages. It's gonna work like this: const fetch messages, use callback. And then we will have, so we have to fetch each message individually. There's no endpoint in my app which allows you to like fetch multiple messages at once, but that's okay. So we say message IDs.map, and we're gonna make a fetch request in here. Let's turn this into an asynchronous function. And so this is my API from the app. There's no public API, but I think it's fine if I show this one. And then for each of them, I'm just gonna return the data that comes back. Something like that. And then of course we need to add a use effect so that it will actually fetch the messages. All right, let's take a look at the console. Oh, so we don't log them, sorry. Console.log messages. And okay, so seems like I cannot increase the font size in here, but maybe you can see that now here we have some data. I can even open it in the new tab. So we have the message text, the username, and the users who liked it, all that stuff. So let's introduce a state where we can store these messages. So for that, we need to have the type of the API response, and this I have prepared. So let's add some types. This is the TypeScript schema of the API response, so I'm just gonna do that. It's pretty handy because I just copied it from the source code of my app into this project. And there are multiple of them. Initially we set it as null, and now here would be so there's a naming conflict in here. I'm gonna rename this to fetched messages and set the state. Now we're gonna say if there are no messages, if they are not yet loaded, we're just not gonna return anything. And so we so you see, for a brief moment nothing gets returned, and we need to tell Remotion that we want to wait until the data is loaded, so that Remotion will not prematurely render the video when there's no content and there will be like flicker or no content at all in your video. We do that by using the delay render API, and it works like this. So we make a handle delay render, and now so we don't want to create one on each render. We only want to create it when we initialize the component. So I'm gonna turn this into a use state. Alright, so now with this special use state syntax, we only call delay render once when the component gets mounted. And we can use the continue render API to tell Remotion that we have finished fetching data and that now Remotion may render the current frame. So let's call continue render here after we have fetched the data, and we have to pass in the handle. The handle is like the reference to the delay render call, so that it knows that this one has finished loading, so that it can keep track of it. Alright, so let's render some messages. So just messages.map. And let's start off with a really big font size. m.message.text. Oh, and we get a error. That's unfortunate. Let me quickly think about why we get an error. Oh, I see. So it's not JSON, it's JSON.data actually. And let's see, do we get any data now? I guess let's just put a console.log statement. It's pretty handy that you can use console.log when making a video. And so we have the array. So maybe it doesn't get rendered because there's no key property. m.message.id. No, still nothing. we should also add this inside an absolute fill. So even I get confused by this, but the problem is that this is how HTML and CSS is working. So not much we can do about it, but what we can do is we can create a message component. Export const message, and I guess let's increase the font size here, and this takes a prop. Let's call it data. And here we can render the text. Going back to our main component, let's replace this div by a message. Alright, the text is really tiny. So now I'm just gonna spend some time with HTML and CSS to style this message. And I don't wanna explain it too much or spend so much time on it, because you probably wanna do something different. You wanna do it in your own way, right? And yeah, so let's start off by adding a container. So I'm not going to type this out. I've prepared it a little bit to also save you some time. So we have a container where we just define the font size, the line height, just blow up everything a little bit. And it looks like this. Then let's work on the layout a little bit. So I'm gonna make a row so that on the left side we can display the avatar, and on the right side we can display the text. So let's make a div, display flex direction row. Actually, let's do it clean. Display flex direction. Let's type it out. Okay, that's a row. As you can see, now it becomes a row. And on the left side, we are going to display the avatar. The cool thing about this is that because this is React and my app is also in React, I can copy over the component from my app into my video. This is the benefit of doing everything in React. Let's take a moment to appreciate that. We do have this time to appreciate it because we save so much time by simply copying over this component from my app. And as you can see, I import from React Native here. This is the actual component that I use in my app. And so it even has like some fancy stuff, like there are some keywords which will make it that you get a custom profile picture that matches your username. So let's import that. And seems like I'm still missing some imports. This one should work, right? All right. And one module that I am missing that I'm going to install is Polished. It's a color manipulating library. Very useful, with which I am just like darkening a tone here. I guess it's not really necessary, but it's already installed. Let's run npm start again. And instead of having the text twice, let's have our avatar. It's called gifted avatar because I'm using gifted chat in my app. It's a library for that helps you handle things for apps that have chatting functionality, like displaying the messages, the timestamps, sorting the messages, all that stuff. And does it work? It does. I had to refresh. So, alright, seems good. Let's add some space between that. And I like for that to create a spacer component with a width of maybe 30 pixels. And actually I think it's not doing 30 pixels because the right side doesn't have a flex value. That's a flex box for you, and now it has become a little bit better. Now another thing that I want to do here is called justify component center, and now all the messages are aligned in the middle, which is also something really nice about using HTML and CSS, that you don't have to worry about that. Next up, I am going to add username and time. The username is usually in my app. Let's see if this works. It's bold and a bit smaller, and let's also add some margin. Data dot user dot username, and we have our username. For the time, let's make it a little bit gray. Data dot message dot created at. That's a timestamp for you. Let's also wrap this in a row. All right. And make it a bit smaller. And for formatting, we are going to use date functions. That's my library of choice for formatting dates and manipulating dates and doing calculation with it. Very useful. Highly recommended. date functions. And let's format the timestamp. Can you format a Unix timestamp in After Effects? I don't know if you can do it, but I bet it's not as easy as it is here. I say that while I make a mistake, so let's focus. npm start. All right. Let's add some margin in between. I'm just gonna hack it a little bit and align it like this. One thing that I also want to show is how many likes the message has gotten. And that is also something that I can actually copy over from my app. And so let me do that. So we get an array of usernames that have liked the message like this. And I hope. Okay, it needs to be like this. And we can just render it like this. Yeah, so that does work, I guess, but we need to format it a little bit. So we have something called likes label, which has a gray color and is also a tiny bit smaller in font size. All right. And what we want to do is if a message gets many likes, we want to abbreviate this. So let me copy in over another snippet from my app. And it's not working, so I have to copy over the assets. One is I'm gonna display a heart icon. It looks like this. I think can be a little bit simplified, to be honest, but yeah. It's kind of weird SVG markup, but I didn't pay so close attention. And let's import it like this. Let's also copy this over, and then I think we should be fine. Okay. So the likes label, it can actually be a row. And maybe let's do justify content center. It's either that or align items. Yeah, I always get it wrong, so if I am not lucky to get it right the first time, I have to try a second time. And now you can see with this logic that I have here, it's not gonna show all 13 likes that this message got, but only the newest one, and it says 12 others. So let's add some margin here. All right. Wait. Should we do it, or should we add some inline space? I felt like it messed with the layout. Yeah, looks better like this. Okay, so that's it. We have fetched data from an API and are displaying it in our video now. And what's cool is that it's super dynamic, so we can, let me just quickly show you, for example, if we duplicate this, that we can add as many messages as we want and create a conversation like that. And we'll just adapt, including the layout, which is really nice. So the next thing that I want to do is I want to animate the messages so that kind of the words appear as you read them, approximately. And I've also prepared this a little, and we're gonna do some calculation. So wait, first let's split each message up into words. So words equals data.message text the splits, and then we're gonna have words map okay. It's good, and let's just do it like that. Just add a space after each word to get the original layout. Now we can actually calculate, now we can apply opacity to each word individually. And we're gonna make a function called const word opacity, and we're gonna base it off the index, or like, so this first word has index 0, the second word has index 2, etc. So index number, and let's make a function const get opacity for word so let's hard code a value for now. And apply it. Style opacity word opacity, and let's get the index, which is the second argument when you do a dot map. And now everything is opacity 0.5 as we have hard coded it. And now let's get the current frame. So we always need to do that if we want to animate something over time. And let's also pass that in. Now we have the index and the frame. So we could do something like if I is bigger than, so if I times 5 is bigger than, or what I meant to say, if I is bigger than, let me think. No, I wanted it like this. So if I times 5, I meant index, then the opacity is 1. Otherwise it's 0. and we get this effect. I meant less than, I suppose. And we get this effect where the words are fading in over time. This is how it's supposed to be. We seem to have a unintended line break, which is funny. Oh no, that's because it animates over time. So yeah, the words animate in over time. Now let's try to make this one a bit more sophisticated. So I have decided that a good duration is that it will take half a frame for one character to appear. Now we're not gonna animate each character, but longer words will take longer to appear, and this to me feels right. So I'm gonna make this a constant, and let's so we also need the words in here. All right, so I'll pass in the words. And now let's delete that. And let's say const words before words slice from 0 to index. Now we have created an array which only contains the words before the current word, and we're gonna say we're gonna calculate how many characters. That is words before dot join dot join dot length. All right. And now we're gonna interpolate that. We're gonna take in the current frame, and we are going to say if the first let's create the duration. So the duration of how long it took for all the characters before to appear. The duration per character. And of course, when all the others have appeared, that's when we are going to start our fade in. And let's just say that the fade in is going to take 4 frames. So we start at when all the characters before have faded in, and we end at 4 frames later. And we animate the opacity from 0 to 1. And it doesn't want to import interpolate. Alright, so as you can see, now the words are fading in nicely. So let's make it so that the word let's make it so that one message appears after another. And for that, let's go back into our messages component. So I'm gonna say messages durations, and let's say messages.map m.message.text.length times, we need that constant we just defined, times duration it's crazy that it doesn't wanna auto import. I guess my computer is pretty slow because I'm recording at the same time, but yeah. So, and let's add a delay prop to the message so that we can define when a message should start to animate. Delay. That delay, let's calculate it. That delay is messages durations dot slice. Again, we use the same technique. We wanna first get the array of previous messages. We slice from 0 to the index to get the previous messages, and then we add together the durations of them to find out when the current message should start animating. So A plus B is how you sum together an array. Did we make a mistake? Let's have a look. Cannot be, okay, so we should start at 0. Okay, thank you, TypeScript. I hope you are using TypeScript. Then let's, here when we say the current frame is frame, let's manipulate that a bit and say actually the current frame is frame minus delay. And now you can see the characters start fading in after each other. Let's make it so that we add a pause between the animations. So let's say plus 30 to add a 1 second pause. If you want, we can also make it frame. We can make it FPS dynamic. And if we want to just add a pause of 1 second, we just do plus FPS. And now we have a pause of 1 second in between. This 1 second is enough time to allow us to animate in the likes. So, like opacity. So like opacity, for that we don't need an index. Let's say like animation start. And for this, let's say words dot data dot message dot text dot length times duration per character. I think that's when every character has finished fading in, right? Makes sense to me. And then we say the like opacity, we interpolate the current frame and we take in the input range. The input range is the range that we are interested in animating. We want to start the animation at the like animation start, which is when all the words have faded in. And let's also maybe this one can be a little bit longer, say +8, and we animate it from 0 to 1. So anything before like animation start is 0, anything after like animation start +8 is 1, and between those values we animate. So it's really worth it to get familiar with the concept of interpolate. So powerful. So powerful, and yes, indeed, it does work, but I think I applied it to the wrong thing. Actually, we can do like this and simplify the whole thing. Can we? Oh, so the second one is fading in way too soon. We should call frame minus delay. Maybe let's make a variable for that. Animation frame or something. Alright, looking good. I just wanna add some small animations and then I think we are already done. Let's animate in the username and avatar and the whole message using a slide and opacity animation. And we are already 50 minutes into the video and we have not yet once used a single spring animation. So it's finally time that we start doing that. So let's just call it animation spring. First we need to call the use current frame hook. And frame minus delay, that's when the animation should start, right? We need to pass in FPS, so Spring knows how fast to animate. And for config, so you can put in different physical properties. There's good documentation on the documentation about what these parameters mean. Empirically, I found out that I like damping to 100 for a lot of fade-in animations. I also used it a lot in the Remotion trailer. Alright, so maybe let's wrap this inside a div. You are, of course, free to do everything much cleaner, but I don't want to bore you, so let's hack it a little bit. So I added this as the opacity. So I quite like that while it fades in, the text is already coming in. But now let's make it a bit more interesting by adding a slide translation. I'm gonna call it actually translate Y, because that is how in JavaScript you move content around the Y axis. Interpolate, and we take in the animation as the input. The animation goes from 0 to 1. And for opacity we can use 0 to 1, but if we would use it for interpolate Y, then we would only animate the message by 1 pixel, but we want to animate it by like 200 pixels. So you could multiply it by minus 200, for example. But interpolate is also a nice way to do it and a clean way to do it. So, like I said, the input range is 0 to 1, because that's our opacity, and that's like what Spring does. And we say if the opacity is 0, the message should be like approximately 200 pixels down. So we say 200, and when the animation is finished and the opacity is 1, the message should be where it is now, and the translation should be 0. So now that we did that, let's add it to our markup. Translate Y. And look at that. So yeah, the only thing left to do is the whole content. Before the video is over, I'm gonna slide it up. I'm gonna have like a subtle fade out animation. So I'm gonna say fade out. Let's use a Spring for that. The frame, I'm gonna say frame plus duration in frames. So let's think a little bit about what that means. That means that when the video is at the beginning, here the frame that we pass in is the last frame. So if we want to have an animation at the end of the composition, you can use frame plus frame in duration minus the length of the duration that we want to have. And Spring, you can't measure it yet, but I would say it will take approximately 10, like the animation should start approximately 10 frames before the end, and as you will see, that will work fine. I'm gonna use the same config again, damping 200. It's a Spring animation with a nice speed, looks good, and it takes a bit out the bounciness of the default animation. Alright. So I will actually apply it right here. Opacity, fade out, and it's not working, which makes me think duration in frames must be frame minus duration in frames, so that at the 10th last frame, this should be a plus, at 10th last frame, the frame that we pass in is 0, and then we animate from 0. And also, we don't want to animate from 0 to 1, but we want to animate from 1 to 0. And nah, this is actually what we want. Let's actually make it a little bit longer. Alright, maybe like that. And let's call this out transition, because let's again animate the out translate y. So this time it's the inverse. Transform, translate y, out, translate y. Okay. I think I'm gonna make it a bit stronger even. And I feel like I want to interpolate. So actually let's do it like this. Let's remove this from to here and let's interpolate it so that I think what it's supposed to do is, like, you can really see how the spring animation is slowing down, but you still see the text. I would rather it to be swift and the opacity goes to 0 a little bit sooner. So let's interpolate it and say that instead from 0 to 1, that the opacity goes to 0. I'm trying to explain it. So okay, now let's think about it. So when the transition starts, the opacity should be 1. So we need to put in 1 here. When the transition ends, it should be 0. But let's say we want it to go to 0 sooner than that. So we need to change this value. That way we say when the transition is half done, the opacity already is at 0. And now I think we can reduce this value a bit again. And I think that looks good to me. So we are done with the process of making the actual video. Now let's take a look at the whole procedure of automating this so that I can press a button in my app to render this video. I am back and I have changed a few things. One thing I did is I rendered out the video. Looks pretty nice. And make sure to, in your package JSON, put the correct composition name. I deleted the hello world and created a new one called stories. So you have to put the composition name in here before you render. And then I also started my app. So this is not like a theoretical project. I actually did this to integrate it in my app. And in my app, so you have a lot of courses, real courses from the University of Zurich, and each course has a chat. And since it's my app, I am the only administrator of this app. And I also run the Instagram account of the app. So anyway, what I have done is that I can long press on a message and I get some options like quote, copy report, and because I am the administrator, I can also select the message, and as you can see, it gets slightly highlighted. So I can highlight this and click select and render, and that triggered a render. Let's go to my GitHub. Not Remotion. Okay, that's actually another one. Sorry about that. Okay. This is the one. And you can see a GitHub action has been triggered. And it's now rendering the video with these messages that I have just selected. So if these messages would be funny, I would render a video and then I would post it on Instagram for the entertainment of the people. So how does it all work? We need multiple things. The first thing is we need to make sure that our Remotion video really is parameterizable and that we can render it in a GitHub action. That's the first thing we are going to do. The second thing is we are going to, on the server side of my app, we are going to add a new API endpoint which will trigger this GitHub workflow. The third thing is we are going to create an UI here in React which will call that API. Alright, so let's first start by making sure that our Remotion video is parameterizable. The important thing here is that in your composition you accept a prop and you render your video based on this prop. We have that. So that's good. Now let's go into so each Remotion project has a GitHub workflow file in it, which looks like this. So we have a few parameters in here that are from the Hello World example, but that we need to tweak. So we would have to change it so that you can write in here the message ID. I already did it. And let me show you my slightly tweaked file. So here we have this inputs of message IDs. And as you can see here, we have a comma separated list of message IDs. And unfortunately, GitHub workflows, like, you can't pass in arrays. So what we actually have to do is we have to accept a string. I know that's not so nice, but I think we can deal with it. So I'm just gonna join this, and then here only accept one string, and here split it again. It's not beautiful, but I mean, we can live with that, right? File is that we do an npm install and then call an npm run build, and we pass in these props, which are the workflow inputs. I think this is already in the template for Remotion. And then, since the video would get zipped and uploaded as a GitHub artifact, it's a bit, it's not so nice, because I want to do this on the go. I want to see a funny message on the go and post that as an Instagram video without having to go to a computer and to unzip the video file. So what I instead did was I wrote a script called upload and notify. Let's drag that in here. And this one will upload it to an S3 bucket. So you have to figure out yourself how to create an S3 bucket and how to generate these tokens. I know it's not so easy, but I guess it's outside of the scope of this tutorial. And then I upload it like this. And then I send a Slack message with the link. So it will of course take a few minutes until the video gets rendered, also since you have to install all the dependencies, right? And so it's nice to get a notification that the video is now available. And you can see here my Slack channel. I can click on here and see that the video with a message that I did beforehand was rendered. So in my YAML file I do this, and also so I call this script, sorry. I use GitHub secrets to add all my secrets. It's best to not commit them. And also one thing I did was I changed from Ubuntu latest to Mac OS latest. It is quite more expensive to run on Mac OS latest, but you get the nice emojis. So in my case, it was worth it for the emojis. I don't think the Ubuntu emojis are quite as good. Okay, so I commit this file, and here in the thing I can actually trigger it manually if I wanted to, and but we wanna call it from an API, and for that we need to use the GitHub API. I'm using a Node.js server, and therefore it looks like the following in my app. I have a function. You can forget about this XNS. This is just for testing a function on the command line, where I pass in message IDs. These are just the default ones. Where I use a GitHub token, a personal access token that I generated, give it as few scopes as possible, and then I call the following function: octokit.actions.createWorkflowDispatch. Pass in the repo, the name of the YAML file, the branch, main, or you might still be on master, and pass in the content. In my case, it's going to be the message IDs. I'm going to show you where I call this thing. This is a glimpse of my API. As you can see, it is quite the long file. Here we have several endpoints for posting chat messages, etc. And so if you post to this API, just do some validation to make sure that it's me, so that not anybody can render a video, especially if I put up a tutorial on YouTube, would be and like expose my source code. Would be funny if if somebody will abuse it. And then I just trigger the video. Pretty normal express handling. And by the way, if you wonder about this async handler and how I'm using await inside Express, I think there are many ways to do it, but I've also made another talk explaining exactly that. Alright, so the last thing remaining is to call that API from the client. And how I did it was I first created a Redux reducer, which allows me to select and unselect messages. Then in the chat message component, I here added more options. And pretty much, I mean, you have to figure this out for yourself, because this will not apply to your use case. But yeah, this is probably the ugliest component in the whole app. It's still a class component, and here we have this huge Redux connect statement. Do you still remember Redux connect function? I don't have time to refactor it. Anyway, so here, based on these buttons, I selected, I unselected, and then there's a button select and render. With that, I make the API request pretty dirty, because only I will use it. And yeah, if you do that, a workflow dispatch will be triggered, and a video will be rendered, and a video will be posted into your Slack channel. All you have to do is download it and post it, and voila, we have completely automated the Instagram marketing of our app. We can post these funny messages with just the tap of a button. And yeah, let's wait a little bit until the video is done, so I can show you what the video that we just rendered is looking like. So this is a little bit embarrassing, because it actually didn't work. Maybe you noticed it in the logs, and I just had to debug a little bit why it wouldn't work, and it turned out to be a backend error in my API. So it has nothing to do with Remotion. I just tweaked the API before recording this tutorial, and my bug was that I am selecting a message that has no likes, and then it tries to make a database query looking for the people who have liked it, but there's no user IDs for that, and then it gives you an internal server error. So I'm just deploying a fix right now, and let's try again by only selecting messages that have a like, and I'll be right back. Alright, so this time it is working, and as you can see, it's now uploading, and the action has successfully completed. Finally worked after all, and sure enough, a new Slack message has been posted. Let's open up the video file, and our custom content is in here. Very nice. That's it. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you can make some awesome automation. Don't fire your social media manager quite yet. They also do a lot of other useful stuff. And yeah. Alright, I'm out. Have fun.